All right, so we're going to go ahead and set up our environment. Now, since this is a front-end course and we don't need any databases or anything difficult like that, in this video we're just setting up a text editor, and we're going to be using Visual Studio Code for this course. Now, you don't have to use VS Code. If you want to use Atom or Sublime Text or WebStorm or some other editor, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to follow along to a T, then I would suggest using VS Code along with the couple extensions that I'm going to install as well. Alright, so you can go to code.visualstudio.com and just download it. It is completely cross-platform, so it doesn't matter if you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux. Okay, I already have it downloaded, so I'm just going to go ahead and open the... Oh, let me just close that. I'm going to open up the setup file. And we're just going to go through the installer real quick. I already had it installed at one point, so I guess I already had the folder created. But we're just going to click Next. Now you want to choose these two options right here. This is going to make it so that when you right-click a folder or a file, you'll be able to open it with Visual Studio Code, which is pretty handy. Alright, so we'll just get that set up. Okay, so that's all set. Let's go ahead and launch Visual Studio Code. And you should see your welcome page here. I'm just going to close that up. And what I want to do first, basically I want to set up a couple settings, a couple preferences, and then install a couple extensions. So let's first go to File, Preferences, Settings, or hit Control, comma, or Command, comma. And basically the settings file is one big JSON file, so they're just key value pairs. You have different categories. There's only a couple things that I want to change. One is my font size so that you guys can see this better. So to change a setting, you'll see it says Editor Font Size 14. I'm going to click the little pencil icon and say Copy to Settings. And what it'll do is move it over here to the custom area where we can actually edit it. So I'm going to change it to 26 and hit Control S or Command S if you're on a Mac, and it'll save it automatically and you can see it kicks in. Alright, so another thing I want to change is my tab size. So I'm going to click the little pencil icon and change it from 4 to 2. So that way our code isn't so spread out. And then I also want to turn on word wrap. So I'm going to search for the word wrap in the search bar. And you can see editor word wrap is off. I'm going to go ahead and set that to on. And just going to click save and retry. And then it puts it over here and turns it on. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that, Control S, and close out. And now we're going to install a couple extensions. So we're going to click this icon at the bottom here. This is where you can search for extensions and so on. So we basically want two extensions. One is Live Server, which is this right here. So I'm going to click the little green install button, and it'll install. And this is so that we can take an HTML file and we can open it on our local host rather than on our file system. And it also gives us auto load functionality, so as soon as we save, it'll update and I won't have to keep reloading it. It's very, very helpful. So once it's installed, you just want to click this reload button and it reloads your editor. Alright, the next thing I want to install is Prettier. So we're going to search for Prettier. And Prettier is a code formatter, and basically what I want to do is configure it so that it will fix things on save. Okay, so if we, for instance, if we're missing a semicolon in our CSS, if we save, it'll automatically add it, and it'll also format our code nice and neat. That way everyone's code will match, and it just makes things much easier. So we're going to install that. And you can see it's quite popular. There's 1 million downloads. Okay, so once that's installed, you just want to click reload again. And then those are the only two extensions that we need, at least for now. So next thing I want to do is go back to my settings or preferences settings. And we need, in order for Prettier to auto save or auto edit or correct when we save, we need to search for, let's see, what is it? I believe it's format on save. So search for format right here. Editor format on save is set to false. I'm going to go ahead and set that to true, so it gets put over here. and we'll save that with Control S or Command S. And then the other thing that I want to change, I'm going to search for prettier, and we want, well, actually this is completely optional. I prefer single quotes in my JavaScript. We will be doing a little bit of JavaScript, and if we don't change this, all single quotes will turn to double quotes. So this right here, prettier.single quote, I'm going to set to true, but it's completely up to you if you want to use that or not. Okay, I'm going to save, and that looks good. So we'll go ahead and close this up, and that should be all the settings we need for now. So now what I want to do is just test a couple things out. So I'm going to just create an HTML file right on my desktop. You don't have to save this, you don't have to keep this or anything. It's not going to be in the files. It's just to test some things. So we're going to say open with code. You should have that if you chose those two options in the beginning. Alright, so we're in the index.html file. Now, another thing I want to mention is Emmet. So Emmet is just a fantastic program. It's an extension for most editors, but it's included by default with VS Code, so it's not something we have to install. It's already here. But if you're using Atom or Sublime Text or something like that, I would highly suggest installing Emmet. It allows us to do things like put in an exclamation and hit tab, and it gives us basically just head body tags, a whole HTML layout. If we want to do tags like, let's say, in H1, we could just do H1 tab. It'll give us a beginning and ending H1. If we wanted to add an ID, we could do hash, let's say test tab. It'll give us an ID of test. If we wanted a class, we could do dot test or whatever we want the class name, and it'll give us that class. Now if we want a div, we could do div.test for a class of test, but we don't even need to put the word div if that's what we want. We can just do dot test tab, and it'll give us a div with the class of test. Same thing with ID. If we wanted an ID of test, we could go ahead and do that. So Emmet is very, very helpful. We could do things like, let's say we wanted 10 LIs, we could do LI times 10 and tab, and it gives us 10 LIs. It really makes things much easier, and I'd highly recommend it if you're not already using it. And I will be using it throughout the course, so I wanted to show you that so that you don't get confused when you see me doing things like that. Okay, another thing I wanted to do is just test out the live server. So I'll just put an H1 in here and just say hello world and save. And then if you installed live server, you should be able to right click and say open with live server. And you can see that it opens our file up. So I'm just going to snap these over. Now notice that in the URL bar, it's at our loopback address, which is 127.0.0.1. That's your local host, and it's on port 5500 by default. All right, now what's nice about this is that if I change something here, if I change this to hello there and just save, it automatically reloads. I don't have to keep reloading it, so that's really nice. All right, so I would highly recommend that you use something like this. Most browser or text editors have something like this. For instance, Atom has Atom Live Server. It just makes things much easier and more efficient. All right, so that's all I wanted to do now that we have everything set up. Oh, and if you want to stop the server, you can see right down here where it says port 5500. Just click that, and that'll stop the server. Okay, and if I reload now, it won't work. So in the next video, what I want to do is start to set up our sandbox. So we're going to have a bunch of files I already pre-made that are ready to go and ready to start looking at the syntax for materialize, the classes, the JavaScript components, all that stuff. So we'll get into setting that up in the next video.